Quest for Camelot is a 1998 American animated musical fantasy film directed by Frederik Du Chau and based on the novel The King's Damosel by Vera Chapman. It stars Jessalyn Gilsig, Cary Elwes, Jane Seymour, Gary Oldman, Eric Idle, Don Rickles, Pierce Brosnan, Bronson Pinchot, Jaleel White, Gabriel Byrne, and John Gielgud.Céline Dion, Bryan White, Steve Perry, and Andrea Corr perform vocals. The film was released on May 15, 1998, by Warner Bros. Family Entertainment to help Warner Bros. Celebrate 75 years entertaining the world. Plot: Kaylee dreams of becoming a knight like her father Lionel, who journeys to Camelot to meet with King Arthur as a knight of the Round Table. While there, one of the greedier knights, Baron Ruber, attempts to usurp Arthur, and in the fray, Lionel is killed while Ruber escapes. 10 years later, a griffin attacks the kingdom, stealing Excalibur. Merlin's falcon, Aidan, forces the griffin to release Excalibur and it falls into the Forbidden Forest. Word is soon sent of the missing sword, falling on the ears of Kaylee. Still aspiring to become a knight, she vows to find Excalibur, but her mother Juliana forbids it. Ruber pays them a visit and forces Juliana to agree to give him and his men safe passage into Camelot as part of a plan to take control. Using a magic potion he obtained from some witches, Baron Ruber fuses a chicken with an axe to form Blade. Confuses different weapons to his followers. Kaylee escapes and enters the Forbidden Forest, losing Ruber's men and encountering Garrett, a blind hermit who was assisted by Aidan. He decides to go after the sword, but Kaylee insists on following him to his chagrin, as he works better on his own. They enter Dragon Country and encounter a two-headed dragon, the gruff Cornwall, and the intellectual Devon, who are bullied by the fellow dragons as they cannot breathe fire or fly, and they dream of a time where they could be separate, each believing the other is holding them back, and they do not get along. They narrowly escape being attacked by other dragons and Ruber and his men, thinking they lost them. Kaylee will not remain quiet at a crucial moment, and Garrett is injured by an arrow after discovering a giant rock ogre has made off with Excalibur. Kaylee manages to lose Ruber and his men, and they flee to a cave where the magic of the forest heals Garrett's wounds. They make their way to the rock ogre's cave and try to hypnotize the beast to sleep in order to steal the sword back. Ruber and his men arrive again and try to steal the sword back, but they trick the rock ogre into falling on them and they get away with the sword. Returning to the main road, Garrett insists that he will never be able to fit in with the normal world and returns to the forest. While planning to go after Garrett, Kaylee is captured by Ruber's men, and Devon and Cornwall rush to tell Garrett. Kaylee is held as insurance for safe passage into Camelot, but Kaylee manages to warn them in time to rouse a defense. Meanwhile, Blade turns on Ruber and begins to aid Juliana and Kaylee while Ruber tracks Arthur in his throne room. Devon and Cornwall, finding that by working together they can fly and breathe fire, fend off the griffin and save Aidan from being killed. Kaylee goes after Ruber and encounters him about to kill the injured Arthur with Excalibur, now bonded to his hand with his potion. Defiantly and using the same words as her father, Kaylee faces off against Ruber. They find the way out to the courtyard where the stone that once held Excalibur held. Garrett comes to Kaylee's aid and together they avoid Ruber's attack, causing the sword to be inserted back into its stone. The conflict of magic causes Ruber to evaporate into nothingness, leaving the sword hole in the stone. Blade and Ruber's men return to normal, and Devon and Cornwall are briefly separated before deciding they prefer being together after all. Arthur draws Excalibur from the stone, thanking Kaylee and Garrett for the help. Sometime later, Kaylee and Garrett got married and are knighted by Arthur, and they dance at an elegant ball at the castle. When they leave, they do so on a horse with the sign, "Just Knighted," tied to them. Cast. Jessalyn Gilsig as Kaylee, Andrea Corr as Kaylee, Sarah Freeman as young Kaylee, Cary Elwes as Garrett, Bryan White as Garrett, Gary Oldman as Ruba, Eric Idle as Devon, Don Rickles as Cornwall, Jane Seymour as Juliana, Céline Dion as Juliana, Pierce Brosnan as King Arthur, Steve Perry as King Arthur, Bronson Pinchot as Griffin, Jaleel White as Bladerbeak, Gabriel Byrne as Lionel, John Gielgud as Merlin, Frank Welker as Aidan. Musical numbers: United We Stand, King Arthur and Knights, On My Father's Wings, Kaylee, Ruba, The Prayer, Juliana, I Stand Alone, Garrett, If I Didn't Have You, Devon and Cornwall, Looking Through Your Eyes, Garrett and Kaylee, I Stand Alone, Garrett. Production. In May 1995, The Quest for the Grail was Warner Brothers' Feature Animation's first announced project, and the studio put the film into production before the story was finalized. Animators spent considerable downtime waiting for management to make up their minds. Bill Croyer was originally going to direct with his wife, Sue, producing, but creative differences forced the husband and wife team to leave the project in February 1997. Kenny Ortega served as the film's choreographer. CGI was used for a few scenes, such as to create the rock ogre. According to Kit Percy, head of CGI effects, the software they used was designed for use with live action. Crystal Klabund, leading animator of Garrett, said in an article in Animation magazine, "It was top-heavy. All the executives were happily running around and playing executive, getting corner offices, but very few of them had any concept about animation at all, about doing an animated film. It never occurred to anybody at the top that they had to start from the bottom and build it up. The problems were really coming at the inexperience of everyone involved. Those were people from Disney that had the idea that you just said, do it, and it gets done. It never occurred to them that it got done because Disney had an infrastructure in place, working like clockwork. We didn't have that." Effects supervisor Michelle Gagne also said, "People were giving up. The head of layout was kicked out, the head of background, the executive producer, the director, the associate producer, all the heads rolled. It's kind of a hard environment to work in." Darlisa Cooper-Cohen, producer of the film, said, "We made this movie in a year, basically. That was a lot of the problem. We worked around the clock." Reportedly, cost overruns and production nightmares led the studio to reconsider the commitment to feature animation. Filmmaker Brad Bird thought that micromanaging, which he said had worked well for Disney but not for Warner Brothers, had been part of the problem. Animators Athanasios Vakalis, Kaylee, Crystal Klabund, Garrett, Cynthia Overman, Juliana, Alexander Williams, Ruba, Dan Wagner, Devon and Cornwall, Stephen Frank, the Griffin and Bladerbeak, Maiten and Aidan. Promotion. The film was heavily promoted by Wendy's, who offered themed kids' meals that included toys and discounts on theater admission. Warner Brothers also teamed up with UNICEF to promote the home video release of the film by advertising trick-or-treat donation boxes before Halloween arrived. Several posters of the film are featured in a movie theater in the Season 2 episode Innocence of the television series Buffy the Vampire Slayer. The film was slated for a 1997 holiday season release but was pushed to May 1998 to avoid competition with Anastasia, Flubber, The Fearless Four, Alien Resurrection, Titanic, and the re-release of The Little Mermaid. Reception. On review aggregator Rotten Tomatoes, the film has an approval rating of 36% based on 22 reviews. It grossed $6,041,602 on its opening weekend and $22,510,798 during its theatrical run in North America. The studio lost about $40 million on the film. David Kroenke of the Los Angeles Times described the film as formulaic, and wrote that it was a nearly perfect reflection of troubling trends in animated features. Called Kaylee a standard issue spunky female heroine, and said that Garrett's blindness is the one adventurous element to the film. But even it seems calculated. His lack of sight is hardly debilitating, yet still provides kids a lesson in acceptance. Kevin J. Harty, editor of a collection of essays called Cinema Arthuriana, says that the film is slightly indebted to, rather than, as Warner Publicity claims, actually based on Chapman's novel. Stephen Holden of the New York Times wrote, coming on the heels of 20th Century Fox's lush but silly Anastasia, quest for Camelot suggests that Disney still owns the artistic franchise on animated features. The film is recognized by American Film Institute in these lists. 2004, AFI's 100 Years. 100 Songs, The Prayer nominated. Soundtrack. The album peaked at number 117 on the Billboard 200, and won the Golden Globe Award for Best Original Song for The Prayer, and was also nominated for the Academy Award for Best Original Song, also for The Prayer. Video game. The video game was released in 1998 for Game Boy Color.